All right, guys, we are back at 3 Pound Fishing, and tonight we have an extremely exciting situation. We've got an actual interview with Les Standstipher, the winner at the Crappie Masters at Darbone this last weekend. He's had some time to kind of sit back and reflect on his championship, and I couldn't be happier. I love Les's story. I've got to know him over the last 2 years. Um, and I can't wait for you to hear his story because it was an emotional win. It was a fantastic thing, and we actually got to watch it on live on TikTok, which was fantastic. If you haven't experienced that, you definitely need to check out Les's tales on fishing, and he's just a great guy. So without further ado, we're going to bring Les on here, and we're going to talk about his Crappie Masters win at Darbone. And there he is. How you doing,
Hey,
Les?
Mr. Matt. Good. How are you, brother?
I'm doing good. You're about 36 hours removed from your championship at Darbone. How are you feeling? Do you still have the in your body? Do you still feel the adrenaline? Tell us how you feel after that big win.
It's still really surreal. I still am shocked, um, overwhelmed, happy. You name it. There's a lot of emotions that's been running through my mind, and I don't think I've quite been able to unwind from it quite yet. I'm still a little bit wore out after being up for 22 hours on Saturday, so um, it's caught up with me. But man, I'm extremely happy, blessed.
Did you actually drive back after the win, or did you stay that evening?
I drove back. I left there at 6 o'clock exactly. I had about 180 text messages and messages come in before I left Darbo, and I rolled out and drove around 5.5 to 6 hours home. I got home about 1:30, and at that point in time, by the time I got in bed, I had been up for 22 hours on Saturday.
You were worn out, I bet.
I was worn out, and I got up about 7:30 on Sunday morning and went to church and just celebrated my win with my church family and my wife, and it was just an awesome experience.
Tell, share with us like the history because you were doing tournament fishing with your son, and you decided to kind of back off, and then you've decided this year to go back and try it again. Give us kind of a background leading into Darbone.
So Keaton and I had fished together for about 6 years on the national level. We fished the Elite Series as well, and um, a couple years ago, I had got in touch with you, and you and I had made contact and kind of got to know each other. And um, Keaton started praying about his church and taking care of his family and things more. And he kind of backed away from the tournament fishing. And when he did that, some things had transpired, and I really wanted to prove a point to myself. Um, and not just a bunch of people, but basically a point to myself to give me some self confidence in what I was doing. I was guiding here on Eufaula Lake in Oklahoma, and I really was, um, I really struggling mentally, Matt, to stay to stay focused and say, you know what, I can do this. I'm not just a net man. I'm not just that. You know how that goes, but I really put my head to the grindstone and just started really pushing myself hard to be a better angler and the better. And I know by saying that, the better anglers you fish against, the better it makes you. And so, with that being said, I fished with Keaton for 6 years. We placed in the top five several times, and then I fished a year before last. I fished with my wife because Keaton had went to do more things with his church and things, and so I made it a point to fish with my wife for that year, and we done fairly well. And then we took a year off. My guide business, Matt, I probably told you this, but I did 191 trips and cleaned 12,000 fish in 2025, and God blessed me so much in that. And then I told her, I said, if God wants me to fish the tournament and get back out there, and get to minister to the other anglers and just be a light in a dark world, I said, he'll make a way with my sponsors. And 3-pound fishing, power breaks, crappie slammers, all these guys started stepping up. And I said, if that's not a clear picture of what God wants you to do, you'll never see it. And this was just another God moment on Darbone. From start to finish is unbelievable.
So you actually took a year off, though. So you took a year off just to do the guiding because of the guiding, and then the choice to go back was, I mean, just to prove it to yourself again, to see how you can do it.
Yeah, basically to prove it to myself, Matt, and also, man, it's just in my blood. I love the competitiveness, but most of all, I love the camaraderie. I miss seeing you on the trail, and I love seeing those guys, and just being able to be a friend to them. It's just an awesome experience.
Now you actually had a pretty good turnout the first event of the year. You actually did fairly well. I mean, not up to your expectations, I know, but the first tournament back, I mean, you had to be happy with your the first event of the year.
I really was. That was a learning experience for me because when you're fishing by yourself, everything has changed. You're not only the fisherman now, but you don't have a net man. You don't have people to take care of your fish. That teamwork atmosphere that you had with your partner is gone away now. It's all on your shoulders, and that was really something also, Matt, that I had to prove a point to myself that I can handle it. I had broad shoulders that I could do it. So that's that first tournament. Was it where I wanted to be? No, I was disappointed in my finish. I figured them out the last hour. I wish I would have had that back, but that's what makes you a better angler, something that drives you to say, okay, I'm going to work harder at this. So,
okay. So going into Darbone, how many days of pre-fishing did you have? And walk us through the whole pre-fishing process, how you decided where you were going to fish, but how was it going for you? Just give us the whole story of the pre-fishing for Darbone.
okay. So I left down on Tuesday to go down to Darbone. Knew I wasn't going to get any fishing time that day, but I had set, and I study maps at home a lot, Matt. I'm constantly looking at contours, and I think about being on the water here and where the fish should be and what the water temperatures are there, what the lake levels are. And so I started doing some searching on my maps and things here at home. And when I got there, I had a game plan. I was going to check an area that you and I are really familiar with, is Stowe Creek. At the mouth of Stowe Creek, and I was going to push back and check there first, and then I was going to wait for the sun to get up good and proper, and then I was going to move to an area that had some deep water, and I wanted to see where those fish were transitioning to and from, basically. And I stopped in Stowe Creek, and I was in 16 foot of water. The first fish I caught there was like a 205. I don't stick a lot of fish on pre-fishing. I'm looking more than anything, but I caught a 205, and I'm like, okay. And I searched around and found a few more, decided I was going to make a run, go someplace else. And I wanted to try as much as possible to get away from the pressured fish. And you know as well as I do, at Darbone, there are key areas on Darbone that get a lot of pressure from anglers all throughout the year, and I wanted to try to stay away from that. So I said, I'm going to go as far east as I can go. I'm going plumb down by the dam. Went down past the ski area to a small creek on the right-hand side. I set the trolling motor down. I actually seen Bryce Ackerman there, and him and I chatted for just a second, and I eased off through the channel in 16 foot of water. Then I dropped off into 28 foot, and I was there, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes probably. And I noticed something. I'm scanning at 50 feet out and 35 feet down. And I noticed something to me that looked a lot like a sand bass. But when your graph is scanning out that far and that deep, you know, they don't always look like a pie plate. And I thought, well, that fish is darting in and out of those bait fish. I dropped down there, stuck it, and it was a 225.
Wow.
I went a little bit further. I seen another big fish. I went about 100 yards, and I caught a 205. And I actually messaged my wife, and I said, I have figured something out here. The pressure of the boats pushed them off the flats, into that deep water, and all them shad were down there at 30 foot deep, just suspended underneath them. And them crappie were in the middle of those bait fish, and you would get glimpses of them. So you had to be kind of strategic about what you were doing.
Right.
And so I said, I'm getting out of there. I'm going to go look at another spot, and didn't see any boats down there. And I made a run. I went completely over by the dam, right in front of the boat ramp by the dam would be the southeast side of the dam. I drop a trolling motor. I go 50 feet. I'm scanning down again, and the water depth there was 32, 33 feet. And I'm running off the edge of that break, and I see a fish rolling in and out of bait fish. I drop on her, and she's a 219. I literally caught one fish there. I told my wife, I said, I'm packing up, I'm getting out of here, and I won't be back. I'll go check it one more time, and I won't stick another fish. So I wheeled out, went and played a little bit of defense, Matt. I went over in front of the mansion. I went down to the Horseshoe and some of those creeks, and I looked around for 2 days, and I got off the water about noon on Wednesday, and I went back Thursday to that area. There were still no boats there. They were out in the middle pushing on the flats, but they weren't up against those deep channels. And so I rolled out about 10 o'clock.
Did you see the fish again? Did you see?
Absolutely, I did. Yeah. Yeah, I went back in there, and it was quick. I literally stuck my trolling motor on 8 or 9, and I made about 100-yard stretch and seen 8 or 10 fish that were giants, and I said, I'm out. So I wheeled out. I was back at my motel room by 10 o'clock on Thursday. And I had people text me, you're off the water already? I'm like, yep. Man, you must have found some fish. And I said, man, it's win, lose, or draw right here. I said, I'm giving it all I got. And I just went back and I texted my wife and I said, I'm on some good fish. I said, I hope they stay. So then leads into Friday. And you know how everybody loves to talk. You know, you're hearing all kinds of talk about the fish people are catching. And I'm being tight-lipped a little bit, and I'm not normally like that, but I was being pretty hush about it. And I told my wife, I said, I made a game plan. I said, I'm gonna go to the spot I caught the first fish, and I said, I'm gonna stay there. And I said, when my scale hits 950, I'm running to where those big girls were at. And I said, that's my game plan, and that's what I'm sticking with. I dropped a line in at 7 o'clock on Friday morning. At 7 minutes after 8, my scale hit 961. As soon as I weighed the fish, dropped her in the box, I jerked the trolling motor up, and there was another team, and they were rolling across the flat. And I got up on Pat on the ski lane, or in the ski lane down there, and I went 56 miles an hour fast as I could over there to try to get there before anybody else would drop in that spot. So I got there at about.
I mean, when you were moving over to that area, had you seen any boats over there at all?
No, there wasn't anybody over there.
This is your B spot or your second spot.
Yeah, it's where I felt like I could put a kicker in the boat is what the main thing was. And there was a few boats. There was Bryce Ackerman, the Allens, and Kevin and Jessica Hicks. They were and Zach Minix, and they were about 300 yards down from where I was going, maybe a little further even. But I shot up there, had a boat go around me on the left-hand side, and I was still scanning at 50 feet. And I've got 961 on my scale. Actually, it was 1061. But anyway, had 1061 on the scale, and I'm scanning, and the boat passes me at about 75 feet in front, and I'm easing towards him. And at 30 feet, I see a fish rolling underneath his boat. I can see his motor on the scope, and that fish is drifting back and forth. And I'm like, did he not see that fish? And I roll up there behind him. I don't know, I'm 50 feet behind him, probably, maybe a little further. He eases forward to go into that channel, and he goes over the top of those bait fish. And I take the Savage 15-footer, and I drop down there, and she rolls over and stops. And I'm like, this is fixing to happen. And she rolled up and grabbed it. When I set the hook, it was like hitting a log. And I get her to the top, and I'm in the floor trying to net with my hog net, got the rod over the top of my head, and I drag her in it, and she's a 286. And at that point, I mean, on the live, I'm ecstatic because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just went from I just went from 1061 to over 11 pounds in a snap of a finger. And I didn't go another 30 feet. And I stick another 225. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. I stayed for a little bit longer. I stayed till about noon, Matt. And then on my live, I told my wife, I said, I'm rolling out of here. I'm rolling out of here. I'm not going to lose it on day one. And I sure can't win it on day one. I said, I've got to leave these fish alone. And so I knew Zach and Kevin and a couple other teams, Bryce, were all down there, but they were just making circles back and forth. And so I peeled out of there and I went to Stowe Creek and I went to looking, and I spent the next 4.5 hours and never stuck another fish. I was just searching for another giant kicker in someplace else possibly. And when I hit 1176 on the scale on day one, I was so happy with that weight. I was happy with my performance. I legitimately lost a 3-pound fish at the top of the water on Friday. While the live went off, it was crazy. I stick her, she's coming to the top, and I can see her roll, and she flashes, and I take the net and I poke in the water. And when I did, I could tell she was skin hooked, and she shook her head. And she didn't stay on top, and she just rolled and went straight back to the bottom. And I looked for her again, couldn't find her. And I'm like, that would have been nice, but it wasn't going to hurt me per se because I fished really clean. And so with that being said, I'm sitting in third place going into day two. Mind is running a million miles an hour.
I just wanted one little strategy question. So if
Okay.
you knew there were more fish in that second spot, why not stick a couple more and inflate your day one number just so that you could perhaps be in the lead or have some weight over the other guys, opposed to trying to save them for day two? Because I guess you never know what's going to happen on day two. You don't know if they're going to be there. You don't know if you're going to have 3 or 4 other anglers in that same area on day two.
Right.
So what's the mindset going with that?
So two things that go through my mind, because I'm very critical on myself a lot of time and in things I do. But my first thought process was, you're not going to, at this weight, at 1170, you're not going to lose a tournament. You ain't going to lose it on day one. My second thought process has something to do with me mentally. I don't like being in that lead spot. I have to have something to work for. And I have more pressure setting in the number one spot like I was at Truman going into day two than setting in the top 5, because I feel like I've been pretty consistent, Matt, on how I fish and weight. And I told my wife, I said, if I can go out and I can duplicate that weight, I'll be extremely happy with my performance, win, lose, or draw. It didn't matter. So that was my thought process of saying, I'm going to get out of here. Because, and another thing too, Matt, is I felt like some of the other anglers that were in that area wasn't seeing those fish that I was seeing in those bait fish, or I had heard a lot of talk that we can't get them to bite. And I was having zero issues with that. So that was my thought process. I go, you know what? I need 10 fish. I caught 8 fish on Friday. 9 fish on Friday is all I caught of the whole day. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to beat those fish up trying to cull a 205 or a 210. Just get out of there and come back and save you some fish for the next day.
Excellent. I love that thought process. That's fantastic. So walk us through the entry of day number 2 and what you were going through mentally in the morning. Did you sleep that night? I mean, tell us everything. Give us the detail.
Okay, so I was teasing Bryce Ackerman on Friday night. I told Bryce, I said, he was teasing. He said, I ain't gonna be able to sleep, Les. He was in 4th. He said, I'm not gonna be able to sleep. I said, man, just go in there, get you some rest. And I went back to the motel room after eating my dinner and stuff, and I was sitting there by myself and just kind of reflecting. I was talking to my wife, and I told her, I said, man, I'm pretty wore out. I said, I'm going to get some sleep tonight. And I laid down in bed, and 2:15 rolled around and my eyes opened, and I was sitting staring at the ceiling, and I'm like, anxiety kicked in. And I'm like, what in the world? I said, that's what I get I was snared by the words of my mouth. I was teasing Bryce, and I got a dose of it. And so I gathered myself up, and I read my Bible and done my praying like I do every morning. And I walked out of Darbone Inn and went down to the boat ramp, and I took a picture. I posted it on Facebook, Matt, but I took a picture of the lights on the bridge at Darbone down there at 2:30 in the morning. And I said, what do you do when God wakes you up at 2:30 in the morning? I said, you go down and you look your nemesis right in the face and you tell her you're coming for her. I said, I felt like David and Goliath. I said, I ain't got 5 smooth stones and a sling, but I said, I got a 3-pound, 15-foot Savage, power brakes, and crappie slammers. And so I was down there talking to the water. And if somebody would see me, they thought I was crazy. But I started my day off early. I went and grabbed me a cup of coffee. Probably didn't need that coffee. I was wound tight as a 7-day clock. And no. I drove my truck over there, and I sat at the boat ramp from about 3:30 on, and waiting to go and check in when Blake got there. And I just sitting there having a conversation with myself. I said, that's okay. They know me there. And man, I'm telling you, it was anxiety was high. For sure.
That's cool.
But
that's exciting. So how does this day start for you there then?
Went over, got my live well checked, and I went back to the boat ramp, and of course everybody there is saying, man, you're in a good spot. And they're like, hey, if we see you, we'll stay out of your way. And I said, hey man, I'm gonna go out and put my head down. I'm just gonna do what I do, and to God be the glory. Just whatever happens, it happens, and I'll be happy with it because I'm where I'm at, and I get to be with some great people. And so I roll out and head underneath the bridge and head towards the dam again. And it's about 6:45 when I come into the ski lane. And my plan was, Matt, I was going to go back to the exact same spot where I started on day one. I was going to go to that corner. When I hit 950, I was going to roll out. Or if I didn't see the fish that I had seen the first morning, I was going to immediately pack up and roll over to spot 2 because I did see fish there. And I was going to go over there and I was going to beat on that all day. And so I come around through the last buoy line, hit the ski area, headed towards that spot. I get around the corner where I can see where I started. And it looks like a Christmas tree of boat lights in that corner. And I said, holy moly. I mean, I literally had 4 boats behind me, and I shut down just off the boat lane. And they all shut down thinking something was wrong. And I was like, I'm not going over there. And so that big flat right there on Darbone in the ski area that's like 6 or 8 foot deep in that one spot, I just skint that little nitro back and headed right across that stumpy flat as hard as I could go. And I went to the corner where I caught that 286.
Right.
And I sat down, and there was no boats there. And I sat down, and of course I started my live and stuff, and hit 7 o'clock. And I started sticking fish. And at 7:03, I had 1164. And at 8:06, I started at 7 o'clock, and at 8:03, I was done. An hour and 3 minutes. I had 1164 in the boat. I went 7 solid hours and stuck 2 more fish. And one of them was a 190 and one of them was a 189. I never seen another fish, Matt, that would cull the 190 that I had in the box at all. That I caught. I went by a group of anglers, and I was scanning, and I seen a big fish sitting in the fork of a tree, and it was Brandon Horn, and he was running up to that tree, and I said, boy, there's a good one right there, Brandon. And he dropped down on her, caught her, and she was a 225. She would have helped, but I wasn't about that. I wasn't going to cut him off. He was right there, and he was making a line to her, and that's just not me. So I wheeled ahead and went on down the channel. But I got to looking at my graph, and I tracked my trail on my trolling motor, and I went 13 miles on my trolling motor that day. And for 7 solid hours, I never seen another fish to stick.
It was
I was
very
just going
exciting.
into the weigh-in going, Lord, you give me what I got, and that's all I got.
Well, it seemed like the feedback people were getting on the other anglers was that you were in pretty good position. I mean, or at least you had had a great start. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the TikTok. Uh, I watched you call out your 139, your 149, or whatever the numbers, how they kept growing to grow. And boy, that happened quick, early. I mean, it happened early. So that
Yeah.
the TikTok thing is just fantastic to watch. I mean, I wish everybody would do something similar to that. Talk about the bait that you were using before we get up to the actual whether when you win or not. I want to see the bait that you were using, and did you use it all the way through the practice? I mean, was it successful the entire time you were there? I mean,
It
or was
was a
it
fluke.
it was a fluke.
I was going to say it was a fluke, but in all reality, it really wasn't a fluke. I knew everybody that was talking. You sit and listen to table talk is what I call it, or motel talk, whatever them guys are doing. But they're sitting there and they're like, "Boy, I can't get these fish to bite. I can't do this," and they're starting to tell colors they've tried, and so pre-fishing. I talk a lot about the Okie shad that I got to help design the color on through Crappie Slammers, and I was sitting there going, "Man, I can get them to bite that Okie shad, but it's not a light bite. It's just not an aggressive bite. Like you just sometimes you feel that thump, and it's like, oh man, that's the bait, and it'll hook them deep." And so I went to digging through some of my Crappie Slammer stuff, and I started looking at this is going to sound really crazy, but I started looking at those bait fish that are suspended down there. And I'm starting to look at the ones that are kind of away from the cluster and looking at the size of them on my graph. And I'm like, you know what? I wonder if a bigger bait, something around 3 inches, wouldn't be closer to what they're eating. And so I had the Crappie Slammer Okie shad on in a split tail, and I stick this fish, and she's probably, I don't know, she's probably 180-ish. I bring her to the top, and I look, and she's got a shad in her throat. And I'm like, huh. I take my pair of pliers, and I pull that shad out, and it's about 3 inches long. I go. So I went to digging through baits, and I found this bait right here. It's a stick bait. It's like a Ned rig. It's called it's a Crappie Slammers shimmer stick in bright purple.
Really?
Anybody that knows me, purple is my go-to. It's a mental thing. Purple, white and chartreuse, and even my Okie shad has purple in it. So I tied that bait on, and I went over in another area where I'd heard some guys saying them fish won't bite. I was out in front of Darbone Inn, and they're like, man, we can't get them fish to bite. There's some good ones out there, but they won't bite. So I was like, I'm going to go over there and see if I can make them bite. I tied that on. I pull up on a fish. He's on a stump. I drop down on it. Whoop, 180. I pull up to the next fish. Whoop, 150.
You have to
160.
work for the bite at all? Do you have to work for the bite
No.
at all? Or
No. The only thing I figured out, Matt, was, and this come from history, was you can't drop behind the fish at Darbone. They feel the vibration of that bait coming at them from behind them, and they got rockets in their tails. So I had to figure out that I had to pitch out over the top of them I was taking the 15-footer, and I was throwing out 30 foot and letting it come down in front of them. And if my drop wasn't going to be perfect, I pulled up and didn't even let it get close to them. And then I re-dropped because your drop needed to be perfect. It was real precise. But man, when I figured out that it was being precise on that drop and just hold it on the end of their nose, man, they'd roll up and look straight up, and it was on from that point. But that bait right there, that literally caught every fish both days. Never had I lost that one big fish, and I never had hardly any that just rolled up and didn't get it. I lost my 2-pound fish. You probably seen that. I had one die on me on day one, and it was a 2-pounder. And she swallowed that bait so deep, it got into that soft membrane in the back of her neck. And I don't know if it poked into her brain or what it did, but it killed her. So but God bless me, I stuck a
bait.
What is it?
Is it a gray head that you have on that bait?
Yep, just the lead head.
Great. So is that
And
something you typically do? Do you not mess with colors, or I mean, what? Tell us your philosophy there.
so you've had this happen, but sometimes we peg the weight above. And I've had them crappie bypass a jig to go up there and bite that lead head. And so I started kind of testing the theory on color. Maybe is the color, does it catch fishermen or does it catch fish? And so I started taking the plastic off, and I would just drop a lead head on fish and catch them. And I know you've seen me do that on my lives. I just take a lead head and drop down there and catch the fish. A lot of time, I think it's more about your presentation to that fish and vibration. And I think that was key with this bait, was that vibration that I was giving it. And when I got their attention, I stopped. I didn't sit there and just jiggle that rod or bump it with my hand like I do in some other lakes. But as soon as I got that fish's attention, I would just stop moving it. And they would just sit there and stare at it. Now, I had some that would sit and stare at it for 15 or 20 seconds. And then all of a sudden they would roll up and just like they were mad at it. So the theory with the lead head, I do use color from time to time. Like when I'm using the Okie shad, I'll use a black head. I think in muddy water like you're on Eufaula, I think these fish see that color better because it's a dark blob in the water rather than some guys will say I go extremely light, some go extremely dark. But me personally, I feel like it's more of it's my confidence. I'm confident I can catch one on a bare hook. And I think that's part of a fisherman's, the mentality of a fisherman is saying, I feel like I can catch him on a gum wrapper if that's what I want to catch him on. If you're confident in that, that's what you're going to use. And that's why I use a lot of lead heads. I think I've got 4 packages of 1 ounce or the 1/8 ounce lead heads that Brad sends me. So
That's awesome. So bring it back to the rod then. So what line do you use when you're vertical jigging on a lake like Darbone?
So because of those fish were so deep, I switched up a little bit. I went to just a regular monofilament. I used Berkeley big game in a high vis. I used 10-pound test. I wanted something that had some stretch because I have a tendency with that 15-foot rod. I have a tendency to set the hook pretty hard. I'm an old bass fisherman. So I loosen my drag a touch because I do set the hook pretty hard, but I want that line to have a touch of stretch. And so I use 10-pound mono high vis. It's a kind of a green. I can kind of show you here. It's a high vis green. And I done that because of the presentation. A lot of time, Matt, I was having to throw or pitch to where those fish were going and not where they were. Because on my graph, they would move 6 to 9 feet in those shad. And if you wasn't real careful when you were scoping them, they would move out of your picture and you would lose them in the bait fish. So your presentation had to be perfect. There was a time, and you may have seen this, that you've seen the trolling motor head was facing like this, and I'm dropping 8 foot to the left. And I know people were probably thinking, what is he's lost his mind. And what I was doing is because I run an 8-degree steel, and I know for every 10 feet down, it's 18 inches over. So in 30 foot of water, I'm fishing 6 foot to the left. And those fish were down in those bait fish at 30 feet. So I was having to pitch to where they were going. And it was crazy. That bait would get down there in those bait fish, and he would roll over and they would stop, and the bait fish would scatter, and it just opened a hole for my jig and the fish's head. And I would just ease up there to her, just lay on my brakes and just hold it. And every fish that I dropped on bit. And that was just a blessing because I'd heard so many people saying they ain't biting good or I can't get them to fire. And I didn't have that issue.
All right. So then bring it back to the rod. And what do you like about the Savage? Just talk about, let's talk about the counterweights as well. That has changed for you.
So the counterweight system is unbelievable. That was probably one of the coolest things that I've got to experience is the counterweights. So I can kind of show you here, Matt. I've got them all locked in right now, but I put a scale on that, and I think it was like 7.13 ounces is what I have on there on the 15-footer. So you can take off these individually. I used every one of them that you sent me. And so what I did is I took my 2-foot section for my 15-footer and the Savage, and I don't have it all together right now because I'm in the house, but I made it where if I put my finger right here, whatever counterweight I put in the back, I could balance it right there at the front portion of the cork. Because when I hold this rod, I'm holding it with 3 fingers on the cork handle, and I put this finger on the blank so I can feel that fish bite through that rod. Right. And it also gives me leverage on my forearm with that long handle in the back. So I just did that counterweight because it's easier to put your weight back behind your arm and hold your arm out straight, and that rod tip isn't trying to pull you down, because you know as well as I do, you get out there 16, 18 foot, that tip gets heavy. I don't care what rod it is, it doesn't matter. It gets heavy. But that counterbalance system is absolutely a game changer when it comes to me using the long rod. You've seen me use the 18-footer. The only thing without now that I know how to use my net by myself, right, I could use that 18-footer and not have an issue. But my mind was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to do this. So, but yeah, the 15 was my go-to.
Is 15 normally your go-to, or do you ever try the 16? Just out of curiosity.
Actually, the 16-footer is what I used in every tournament that I've fished. Grenada, since I've used the rods, I've used the 16 during tournament. The 15 this time was a preference because of those fish being so deep. And I found out on my graph, I scanned at 50 feet and I never drawed my graph back in to like 30 feet or 35 feet like I normally do, because those fish were so deep. I left it at 50 and 35, because what I had done during practice is I had sized those fish up with my graph on 50 feet and 35 deep. So I never even changed it, not even when I was in 16 foot of water, because once my eyes was trained to see what that fish looked like, those big fish, I wasn't going to change it. And the 15-foot rod, when I dropped, was perfect to drop in at that 12-foot mark, and that's where my scope is the clearest. And so there was a little bit of strategic move to that and saying, okay, I'm dropping perfect right here. And man, it worked out perfectly.
Just another gear check real quick. Talk about your Garmin screen and what transducer do you use?
I'm running an 8416 with a 34 transducer. That 16-inch screen is really a key factor for me, because I'm able to tell really well which end is up. I tell my clients all the time, I say, when you drop on this fish, know which end's up. Because I'll tease them and I'll say, hey, go ahead and pick up and redrop, because that end don't bite. And they'll laugh and giggle at me about it, because they'll be dropping on their tail, and I said, that end don't bite, so you might want to go on that other side. And so the Garmin 8416, the 34 transducer, I get really good separation with the 34. I've always just had really, really good luck with it. It seems like to me that you get a little more of a halo with the 32. A lot of guys like the 32. Me personally, I've gotten so used to that 34. I love it.
Talk about, is your transducer just mounted to your trolling motor straight on, or do you have anything additional?
I'm running mine straight to the trolling motor shaft. I'm still running the original 8-degree offset. I don't run the 0-degree mount. I told my wife, I said, I've seen all these guys running 0 degrees so they can drop directly in front, but I'm since 2018 when Scope come out, I've been using that offset. So I'm really comfortable with that offset and understanding the math to saying every 10 feet down, you're going 18 inches left. Same way when you're casting. Matt, you cast all the time. So if I'm casting, I'm scanning out at 80 feet and I see a fish at 50 foot. When I cast, I'm casting 3 or 4 feet to the left-hand side of my trolling motor head out there to catch those fish, because that cone opens up. And so I just learned to fish it that way. And they're like, I've seen you fishing over your shoulder. And I'm like, man, it's just what's effective for me. I mean, you can do you, but that's what's effective for me.
All right, so bring us back to tournament day, championship day. You're in line. You're obviously top 10, so you're one of the last ones to go, third to last, I guess, to go. Were you hearing anything leading up to that line? What was your mindset?
Well, I was nervous, nervous but at peace. I had told my wife, I said, you know what? I said, win, lose, or draw, I'd love to stay in the top five. I said, would it be awesome to win this thing? Absolutely. I said, but wherever God puts me, I'm going to be happy with, and He's going to get glory for it. And so I sat there, and they, you know how they'll line us up, and they'll say the top 10. You get over here and you line up with your cooler, stay with your cooler, and of course, people walking up to you and talking to you, man, how'd you do? And I'm pretty transparent, Matt. You know that I'm not a sandbagger. Somebody come up to me and said, "Hey, man, what'd you get?" And I said, "I'm 3/10 shy of what I had yesterday." Man, that's a good bag. And I had two fish that weighed a little light, and I wasn't about to change that lightweight because mentally I thought, you know what, I might be all right with those weights. And I'm sitting in line, and of course, you know Brandon Fulgram. He's always a stick, always a tough competitor. Bryce Ackerman, that he's local there, he's tough. Kevin and Jessica Hicks were sitting in the lead, so of course they had a giant bag, and I'm thinking, and at that time, I think we were just a little less than a quarter of a pound apart from third to first, and so I'm starting to hear a little bit of talk, and Brandon Fulgram was in second place. Zach Minix, he was a little bit behind us, like in fifth, and Zach's like, I left that area, Matt, and actually Zach Minix come in behind me, caught a 225, a 219, and a 205 right behind me. And what had happened is the boat pressure had pushed him further towards the dam. And he said, man, I think I got 1170. And I'm like, oh no, because we were already tight right there. And my mind goes to doing calculations in my head. And I'm thinking, he may have me beat. And I've always told him, I said, hey man, win or lose, bro, I'm going to pat you on your back, shake your hand, give you a hug, tell you I love you, and congratulations, you know. And so he's like, man, I don't know. He said, I still think you got me. And I said, I don't know. Well, then Kevin Hicks, the leader, comes over and talks to me. And like I said, I'm transparent. I don't sandbag people. I'll just tell you the color of my guts if that's what you want to know when it comes to it. And he said, man, how'd you do? And I said, Kevin, I'll be honest with you. I said, I'm 3/10 shy of what I was yesterday. I said, I got 1126, and I said I had 1176. So I said, I'm right there in that ballpark. And he said, man, my scale says 1110. And man, it clicked. My head goes, what? And I thought, this is crazy. You know, I'm sitting here thinking I may have a shot at this thing.
Right.
Of course, standing in line, you're nerved up, and you're watching these guys that were in the top 10 dropping out and had bad weights, or I say bad weights, but bad day. We couldn't get them to bite. We couldn't do this and that. And I got at this time the Fulgrams, or Zach Minix and Bryce Ackerman. Zach Minix weighs, and he takes the hot seat. And I'm like, whew, he had a big bag, you know, 1170. Bryce Ackerman jumps up there. Doesn't do it. And I'm like, man, I said, here I come. I look over at Zach, and Zach's sitting in the hot seat, and he looks at me. He's got that big old handlebar mustache, you know, and he rolls his mustache up, and he looks over and he says, you got me. I'm like, ain't no way. And I just blipped, there ain't no way. And he just winked at me and shook his head, and I didn't think nothing about it. And I roll up there and throw it on there, and I ended up beating Zach by 0.17. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Man.
So here I am in the hot seat, and I've been there before thinking, oh Lord, this is crazy. And of course we congratulate him, walk him off, get him off the stage there. And I look over, and, you know, Blake says, hey, without giving it away, Kevin, Jessica, come up here and we're going to crown a champion. And I'm nerved up at this point. You can see me fidgeting on the stage. I'm pacing at this point because I'm nerved up. And I noticed Jessica, she kind of She kind of hangs her head a little bit, and it was almost like somebody let the wind out of her sail. And then I realized what Kevin said to me. He'd had 11-10, and I thought, Lord, is this really going to happen?
Wow.
And when he threw their bag up there and they weighed 11-19, I about was an emotional wreck. I promise you. Um, that meant so much to me and in my heart and my mind, I'm wanting to stay humble. Um, but deep down inside of me, it proved a point to me, and I may get emotional now, but I have this thing that goes on in my mind, and I'm like, sometimes I feel inadequate. And it was some validity to it. And to be one of the older anglers that were fighting against some of the top young teams, the Swearings, Bryce Ackerman, even Kevin and Jessica. You're talking Zach Minix. Them are young people. I'm talking in their 30s, some in their 20s, and to take that stage and to walk off there getting to hold those acrylic trophies, man, was something special to me.
Well, we're very proud of you. We uh, probably the most emotionally charged win I've been a part of, at least watching it, and never been so happy for someone winning because I just I feel like I know who you are. I love the God first, the family, and then the crappie fishing, and then and it just it. I think a lot of people feel that as well, and so congratulations. I mean, I think you're well deserved, and you've worked your tail off. Uh, Watch, I mean, through the guide service, through the past tournaments. I don't know. You're well deserving of the championship, and I hope you kick butt the rest of the year too. I mean, no pressure, but I mean, we know one thing we are for sure of. You will give 110%, 100%. I mean, you're gonna give it your all. So
Absolutely. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your support with me and what 3 pound has done for me. I love the rods. I told somebody the other day, I said, as long as you'll have me, I'll be there because I love the rods. It's something that I'm just confident with, and I'm just going to go out and try to represent you and my other sponsors to the best of my ability, and try to keep God first in it, and everything else will just fall into place. So that's the main thing.
all right. Well, I think this is a good ending point for the interview, and I appreciate you, man. I really do, for coming on here, sharing the story. Uh, Hopefully, maybe we could even do more of these. They don't have to be just after a win. Just to be able to talk crappie, I think it's fantastic. People like to know and find out the backstory or why we do certain things on the lake, and we probably need to look into doing that because I mean, this has been a joy. This hearing the story, you know, and I think other people would love to hear it as well. So,
I love it. I think that's a good idea myself.
all right. Well, I appreciate you, Les.
Thank you, Matt.